Good night, Saint Lucia, and welcome to the RoundTable. Tonight, as the world marks the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, Day 4, we shine a light on the battles women fight daily. Escalating crime, economic hardship, inadequate healthcare, and the enduring culture of disrespect towards women. From missing case files to derogatory remarks by public officials, the time has come to challenge these injustices. Tonight, we are joined by two extraordinary women, Melissa Amide and Natoya Popo, who share their stories of strength and resilience in the face of adversity. This is not just a conversation. It's part of a global movement for injustice, equality, and respect. Welcome, ladies. My first guest is Melissa Amide. She's a single mother of 4. She's a small restaurateur and an aspiring life coach. She will tell you a little bit about herself in a little bit. Natoya Popo, she too is a mother. She's a mother of 2. She's the owner of multiple businesses and a youth activist and philanthropist. Welcome again, ladies.
Thank you.
Melissa, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Introduce yourself to the listening and viewing public.
Well, first, my name is Malika.
Malika. I always say Melissa. I'm always baptizing somebody, so forgive me.
That's okay. As Laura said, I am a mom of 4. The backbone to where I am today and what I do and why I do what I do. I'm a background person, so today being here is putting me on the spot to bring out what people don't normally know about me, because I'm always the one doing for everybody else but myself. So we'll delve into some of those things a little bit later. But thank you for having me, Laura.
Thank you for being here. Now, you heard what she said. She's a mom of 4 and all of the things, but yet she looks not a day above 16. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Over to you, Natoya. Now, Natoya has 2 names, and I'm struggling with which name to call her, Natoya or Trudy. So throughout the course of the evening, you'll hear me interchanging between Trudy and Natoya. There's not a third person. It's the same person. But I'm struggling now because her little daughter is in studio with us, and her name is Natoya as well. And so you'll see me having a little bit of a tongue twister, struggling to say Natoya or Trudy. Now, I think we'll stick to Trudy because we do not want Natoya Jr. to think it's her we're referring to. So we'll stick to Trudy. Go ahead.
All right. Good night, all. Thanks a lot for having me, Laura. I am Natoya Popo, mother of 2, and as you rightfully said, owner of several businesses and a philanthropist, youth activist in Saint Lucia. And we'll dive into the real reason why I continue to push hard and persevere through all of what is currently going on in Saint Lucia.
Wonderful. Now, my first question is to you, Melika. But we'll call her Mel because we always call her Mel or Melly. As a single mother of 4, how has crime, we'll touch on crime and the rising cost of living in particular, impacted your household and your business?
As a mom and a business owner, crime is something that is actually at my doorstep. Towards my business, I do a lot of stuff, and one of my businesses is renting small huts and stuff for people, and it's always been targeted. Like for this year alone, it's been break into like 5 times. So imagine having tenants keep moving because you cannot keep the place safe enough. Call the cops, they come, we tell them who the people are, and still they do nothing about it. So that's one thing. As a mom too, you worry all the time that your kids, because I have grown boys, 23 and 19, and you only know that you're holding your breath when they come back home. So you worried all the time when they're out there with all these things going on right now there. Condos.
Okay. So in your businesses, one of your businesses, you said like you're a realtor?
Yes.
And you're the homes that you are responsible for keep
They're
getting
actually businesses. So it's somebody's business.
Oh, okay. So give us a little bit more background. Tell us a little bit more about that. And how you got into that, and how has that been working out for you, and how has it been impacted by the break-ins?
So I used to own a place in the north of the island, and due to COVID, I ended up leaving it. So I rented it out to somebody else. So I relocated to the south of the island. So renting it out to somebody else, it's been targeted a lot. They steal all the items in there. They steal the material in there. So, you go to work next day thinking that you have enough stuff to cook or to do, because she's a restaurateur as well. And the place is empty. She has nothing to work with. You find people targeting her, like once we found somebody put a bag of poop in her front doorstep, and just random things just happening because they just don't want to see another woman survive.
Wow. So I guess I take that to mean that you have a high turnover of tenants.
Well, she's resilient. We've had a few, but this last one, she's holding on right now. I don't know. I'm trying to give her the faith because I know that's my way of making my income. But at the end of the day, if she has to leave, there's nothing I could do to stop her. So,
Right, that's unfortunate. We'll come back to you because you two have grown sons, and they may not be perpetrators of crime, but they could be at any point on the receiving end. So we'll come back to you on that. We'll go over to Trudy. You two are a business owner, multiple businesses, in fact. How has the situation, the escalating crime situation, impacted your business and your family, your household?
Okay, so let's look at crime. Crime on a whole, we can look at it as gun violence. We can look at it as persons who have too much time on their hands and looking for something to occupy themselves. And you find that they target small businesses tremendously instead of going to the big corporate companies that are well secure enough in order to deal with the break-ins, the theft, etc. So you find that it affects the decision making. Do you want to take that risk, and do you not want to take that risk? Do I invest that amount of money? Do I not invest? So it kind of restrains you as to what exactly you can do and what you cannot do.
And what about the cost of living?
Cost of living is...
How has that impacted your business? Tell us a little bit. We know Mel is a restaurateur, but tell us a little bit more about your businesses and how the rising cost of living is affecting those businesses.
Okay, so the rising cost of living. If I'm being realistic, we have inflation globally. But then you find that in Saint Lucia, as a business owner, so for example, I do catering, I do daily meal deliveries, and you purchase something today at $5. Tomorrow it's $9. You cannot go and change your pricing every day. So you now have to either try to break even, try to stay in the black, or you take the negative for a few weeks and then try to increase. And then you find the backlash is, oh, this person prices are too high, this person, small business owners, their pricing are just ridiculous. But we don't understand that the cost in the supermarket, so the cost of the raw materials that we have to face, by the time that we add the labor and etc. to it, you are at a point of you make no profits.
So when our government implemented the 2.5% health and security levy, how did that impact an already, because our prime minister always says it's imported inflation, but we know that not all of it is imported inflation, and knowing that we have imported inflation, inflation, you have on the back of it that 2.5%
okay, so
levy.
Let's look at the imported inflation. Let's give a typical example. You have the cost of a barrel of gas at $65, right? Yet we have gas at a ridiculous amount at the pumps. So are we seriously looking at the international cost of inflation? Because if we do the comparison, we are not realistic in Saint Lucia. So the government needs to go back to the drawing boards and put policies in place that is going to impact the development of the country and not take it into a point of we going backward. We're supposed to be going modern, and then we're going back into the centuries. That doesn't make any sense.
I like the fact that you mentioned the price of gas, because we do know that fossil fuel is perhaps the largest production cost of any industry in Saint Lucia. We don't produce gas, we buy gas. So
correct.
When the cost of gas is high, we expect everything else, production of anything, whether it's food, Whether it's drink, whether it's electricity, whether it's water, whatever it is, we expect the price to go
Correct.
up. But likewise, when the price is going down or when it has been stable, we expect
The pricing
the
to go down.
corresponding,
But it doesn't happen.
and that impacts you.
It impacts me, and I'm very sure it impacts each and every citizen in Saint Lucia. As much as we don't want to admit it, it affects us directly and indirectly.
So what are some of the other challenges? I think that's a good way to talk about the challenges that you face as a small business owner in accessing resources or financial support, because like you said, you can't daily change your prices.
No, you can't.
Because other people who are accessing your business, your services, are budgeting themselves, and they need to have some sort of stable idea as to, okay, what the services they're accessing from you is going to cost, so that they can have their own budgets. So let's talk about some other challenges that affect you.
So let me give you another example. So for example, I'm also an agro-processor, and you find that I manufacture products. The cost it would have taken to bring in the bottles and labeling, etc., just the packaging, that has now tripled. And we're talking about just with the 2.5% added. And then even if you go to the various agencies that are available, they will tell you to pass the cost on to the consumer. How exactly do you pass the cost on to the consumer? So this is like your hands are tied.
So you still find yourself in a situation where the same thing that you are complaining about at the supermarket level. So when you go into the supermarket, but this week it's $5 and next week it's $10. You find yourself perhaps on a monthly basis, maybe not weekly, but on a monthly basis, when you're importing your raw materials, find yourself having to increase your prices. How often have you increased your prices in say this year, and what effect have you seen on your bottom line?
I've had to increase my prices maybe about 6 times. Yes, surprisingly, about 6 times, and it's the bottom line. It's still you at break even.
Oh, so you're still not even making
You're not even making.
profit.
You're not making the profit, because, like I said, you buy something at that price today. Tomorrow, it's so even when you say, okay, let me see for the foreseeable future, and then you say, okay, I'll put that $4 profit margin. By the time you go back and get the raw materials, that $4 profit margin that you have put in is now $6, and then you're in a negative of $2.
How has that impacted your ability to raise your how old are your children?
I have a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old.
How has that impacted your ability to care for them and to provide the basic needs?
It kind of has me in restraints, but it brings me back to the culture of being raised in the countryside and having to adapt and trying to bring and being innovative and doing the DIY aspect of it, and just trying to ensure that they have an easy life and not understanding the serious ramifications that is out there.
What about you, Mel? How has this increasing prices, because you will be impacted daily, because you cook every day, and you would have to maybe shop weekly and that kind of thing. How has that impacted your business? How has it impacted your ability to care for your children and to provide their basic needs?
Well, like Trudy said, going to the supermarket is a hassle, because even when you're trying to plan a menu, you know, okay, I bought this at that price last week, so you give the customer a certain price, and then you go to buy it and it's more expensive. You cannot go to the customer. So but not even the supermarket only, even the farmers have raised their prices. So even the local produce, now we're saying that we're small restaurant owners or small business owners, they too are struggling. So we cannot fight them down for their prices because they're local and small just like us. But then you find people disrespect like what we do as restaurateurs. They only see the end result, the product, but they don't know the behind the scenes of what we have to go through. So they're always trying to break down a small person, try and break down our prices. So you wanting to stay alive, sometimes you do break down for them. So now you cannot provide for your children how you want. You have to choose between paying a bill or giving them what they need on a daily basis. So
because owning a restaurant, it's more than just buying the food. You have gas, you have the water, you have the you have staff, you have the containers to put the food. You know, these are not the things that they see. They see on the plate and they say, okay, 2 pieces of dashi and a piece of breadfruit or some rice, but they don't see the other things beyond that.
They're thinking we could do that.
Yeah.
So there's a direct and there's an indirect cost. It's the same thing for manufacturing a product. You still have the direct and indirect
Your
cost,
overheads still remain whether you produce or not.
Yeah.
which is why, even not to shift the topic, but even when you look at healthcare, if there is any outbreak, it directly and indirectly impacts each and every one of us, because you have all sectors indirectly dealing with each other, and it basically impacts all of us.
A lot of times you hear people pay lip service to women, and women are the backbone of society. Women feel the pain every time a child dies, a man dies, a boy dies, or whatever. Women feel the pain. How do you think women's voices can shape discussions on justice reform? For example, in terms of beating the crime level, remediation for crime, recidivism, and that kind of thing. Let's start with you, Trudy.
I think we need to look at this on a holistic level. As much as we'll say women can be instrumental in changing it and probably providing a solution, we need to look at it as a holistic level. I think right now we're looking at crime as, it affects you and it doesn't affect me. We need to look at it as it affects each and every one of us. Come collectively at a table, we have genders down, bottom line, and we discuss it. We don't look at it as, because these guys are raised in the ghetto, that they're that type of individual that we cannot deal with them. Because guess what? If we look at society right now, some of the persons who are in big positions came from the ghetto. So we cannot discriminate because you come from a certain place. So I think that is where the discussion starts, and we need to get passionate women to sit at a table, as well as passionate men to sit at a table and discuss how do we effectively deal with the situation of crime. Yes, nobody can say I can stop crime, and it cannot be stopped like saying stop completely, but we can put a curb on it.
What about you? That's it. I think to do that, we need safe spaces in Saint Lucia. People are afraid. People are like afraid to tell their stories. For example, let me give you a small example. When I was younger, looking for a job around the place, it was like the men used to make a pass at me, like for me to get the job. I would have to sleep with them. Even when you get the job to get up there, you would have to sleep with them. Like, as a woman, why do you have to go through these things daily just to get ahead? And you have the qualifications, you have what it takes to get the job, but no, the men want to crush you down. Even when I started my business for my rental, for me to get the place to rent, the landlord asked me, are you married? Do you have a husband? I'm not renting to you if you're single. So I'm like, that's a low blow.
He's not renting
yes,
to you.
He's not renting.
Single. So there's discrimination in the 21st century.
Yes.
There's still discrimination, like a woman cannot make her own decisions. Or is it that he's afraid of himself? And, I mean, I don't understand. I wonder.
I think because I was the main figure behind the business, he needed a second income or somebody that could say, hey, a man could pay the bills. When the business was what paying the bills.
Misogynist. Wow.
Yes. So I went through that. It took some back and forth.
How did that make you feel? How was that for you? I mean, I could tell reams of stories, I could tell reams of stories of as a young girl coming back to Saint Lucia, trying to get a job. I'm from the South, and I could tell lots of stories about how I had to disguise my address so that I can get a job, because I wasn't getting a job in the South, although I came back to St. Lucia because there was this promise, St. Lucia, I hope you remember, and I know some of you do, of the new frontier. So I came back because I wanted to give back to my country in the new frontier. Recently we've had this phenomenon of 758 and 759. Back then we didn't have 758, 759, but it did exist, the 758 and the 759. Once you anywhere below the Badlil, then your country, not just country, you could not even have an education. Like when you hear people speak from the South, I remember a situation, a principal of one of the premier secondary school. I still remember that. This is a person I have a lot of respect for. And back then, it was it was a joy for me to accept the challenge when people think differently of me because I'm from the South. And one of the things he said to me, and this was a top tier principle, he said to me, "You from the South?" I said, "Yes, I'm from Labrie." He said, "You not speak like somebody from Labrie or from the South." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You speak so well. You're so articulate. You can speak on a range of topics." Yes, an
Basically,
educator said that to me.
Basically, you were not labeled a country bumpkin.
I was not. But then when he found that I was from Labrie, he was so tempted to put that label on me. But he could not justify it because we had had other discussions and he had paid me so many compliments. This, by the way, this was somebody that was romantically interested in me.
Wow.
So I saw the pullback. It's like, what? I'm interested in this girl from the countryside? Like, what? And so I wasn't sure how to feel at that point. I felt good in one sense that, hey, I'm presenting myself and I'm representing for women from the South. But at the same time, I felt offended. How dare you, just because of my geographical location where I had the misfortune of being born, that you want to label me like that. And then I had to say, do you realize that the vast majority of people who live up north are transplants from the South? They had to relocate for jobs and family or whatever, you know, and that opened up another doorway for us to have other conversations. And we ended up being, up to a day like today, we're still friends. So I became the educator, in a sense, but you're younger than I am, and so it's shocking for me to hear that you coming after me still had to go through that. How did that make you feel, and how did you overcome that?
Angry at the most. So I put myself in most of these situations so that other people behind me cannot go through it. I have a young daughter, 2 years old, somewhere, and I do not want her to go through what I did. How would I say it? When women speak, you find people listen a little more because we tell our stories in a different way than if a man were to speak, and people listen. So I think when I said about safe spaces, that we could speak about the things that we go through, so others cannot go through it. In that, let me see, how would I put this? I had an abusive relationship, right? When I was younger.
It's a safe space.
And it got that the police was involved and everybody was involved. And when I needed documentation of said domestic abuse and emotional, there was no documentation. There was nothing to prove that my word against his. So there was nothing that I told the police. So
you mean you made a report and they did not record?
Plenty. They recorded in front of me, but when I went to get
So they didn't file. So they recorded but didn't file.
So none of my reports could have been found. So then you lose trust in the system.
Wow. And we know that these things still happen.
Yes, it does.
Because we just have to think about the police women who have been accusing the former acting commissioner of police of sexual harassment and sexual assault and all of that. And today we're hearing about missing files, and we're hearing of incomplete investigations, and we're hearing about non-facilitation of independent investigators of doing their jobs. We're due for a break, but when we come back, we'll delve a little bit more into the investigations of crime in this country and how that impacts the women folk. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Dominic Fede, representing the constituency of Ancillary Canneries, and really my candidacy for this election is about bringing out the best in the constituency. We've accomplished some 15 inner community roads together. When I look at the cemetery road and I think of women coming to a funeral in high heels and had to bring 2 pairs of shoes because of the mud. Those days are gone. We built the HRD center and we have had some 200 individuals who have been trained within the first few months of opening. We want to build more houses. We want to help more of you. We want to create more jobs. And some of the ideas that we have include a call center in the constituency where, when completed, would generate some 400 to 600 jobs. When I look at the ancillary waterfront project, the jetty is going to be extended. A mini hotel is already at the ground floor and being built. The square is being redone. There's a restaurant in the location of the old community center building. This is going to transform the ancillary waterfront. The drain around the field has been much talk, and it's been an eyesore, and it has been a source of much discomfort to the people of ancillary. But I am happy to tell you that after fighting hard for it together, we are now in a position where the drain is being built. I'm asking you to support us because I'm convinced that we have the superior vision for Saint Lucia. So if you're from Canaries Ancillary, then you know you have to stay with Fede. Let's keep working.
I am Herod Stanislas, your United Workers' Party candidate for Soufrière Font Saint-Jacques. One of the main campaign promises which I made in 2016 was the Hummingbird Beach. So this project have significantly benefited the people of Soufrière as entrepreneurs and created many sustainable jobs. Another project which I'm very proud of is the Old Trafford complex. This again was another campaign promise to build a farmers market for the farmers of Soufrière Font Saint-Jacques and the vendors. And today we've been able to deliver a first-class farmers market combined with a bus terminal, the only one of its kind in Saint Lucia, to the people of Soufrière Font Saint-Jacques. Another project which we promised the people of Soufrière Font Saint-Jacques that we were going to deliver to them was the Esperance Diamond Road. After 40 years, they are finally getting a new road connecting Font Saint-Jacques and Soufrière through Diamond. We have undertaken a comprehensive major rehabilitation of the Soufrière Mini Stadium to make it a world-class sporting facility. We have some very critical projects, critical interventions, which we would like to see take place in Soufrière in the next 5 years. So one priority project for us in the new term is going to be the construction of a Soufrière community, cultural and theatre arts center. We also want to focus on housing, and therefore we want to concentrate on opening up parts of the constituency where you could have housing development, housing schemes, where we can make lots available to the young people of Soufrière Font Saint-Jacques. Vote for me as your candidate, your next parliamentary representative, and I can assure you that Soufrière is going to continue on the trajectory of progress, growth, development, empowerment, and opportunities for all. Performance matters. Let's keep working.
Herod is best lap. I know a lot of man, but Herod is the best one. Mokoneta shine up. Herod is best lap.
Welcome back. When we went on break, we started delving into situations where police officers take reports, they don't file them, and women in particular cannot get restitution for crimes perpetrated against them. The case of Ronald Phillip, former acting commissioner of police, is a glaring example of institutional failure and systemic disregard for justice. The missing case file on allegations of sexual misconduct raises serious questions about the integrity and accountability within law enforcement. How can we trust a system that allows such files to vanish, leaving victims without recourse? Not only are files missing, but investigations are incomplete. And the facilitation for the independent investigators are not being facilitated. This is not an isolated incident. The cases of Mary Ratcliffe, Valinda Joseph, Kimberly De Leon are just a few that further underscore the troubling pattern of gender-based violence and justice denied in Saint Lucia. Let me just remind you of who the three women I just spoke of are. Mary Ratcliffe, a victim of unspeakable violence. Her case exposed not only the brutality that women face, but also the slow and inadequate response of the justice system. Mary Ratcliffe lost her life because she stood in defense of her daughter against her common law husband. And because the police took their sweet time in following up on her, despite Mary having been warned by Shaka, her common law husband, that he would take her life. As the young kids would say today, he would unalive her if she ever spoke to the police. Despite this deathly warning, she still went to the police because as a mother, she believed in protecting her children. The police did exactly what Mel spoke about in the previous segment. They took her report and didn't follow up. What happened? Mary Ratcliffe lost her head, literally. Shaka took her life, destroyed and killed her children as if he had taken the same machete and sliced the heads off their bodies. They were never the same. And he disappeared. Valinda Joseph, her story, like many others, reveal how young girls, even before becoming women, are silenced, ignored, leaving families and communities without closure. Well, now we have closure because her stepfather, who ended up being found to be her murderer, has now been found guilty and sent to prison. But many of us remember the years and years upon years that we went through not knowing, not having any closure, having marched, having protested, having agitated, having her eventual murderer arrested, released, and then rearrested years later. You know the saying, justice denied or justice delayed is justice denied? I still believe that, even though he has been arrested, rearrested, I feel that justice has been denied for the number of years that he went unharmed or unpunished. Kimberly De Leon, a mother and police officer. Her tragic murder remains unsolved, symbolizing the deep-rooted impunity that endangers women, even those within law enforcement itself. These cases highlight a culture of neglect and complicity that perpetuates violence against women. By allowing high-profile cases like these go unsolved, unresolved, the system sends a dangerous message that women's lives, voices, and dignity are secondary to that of their counterparts. Mel, we'll go back to you, and I hope you're okay with it, because this is something that a lot of women do not get a platform to speak of. A lot of us are afraid. We are afraid to speak about what happened to us. We are afraid that we're going to be judged. We are afraid we are afraid, we are afraid. How did that make you feel, knowing that you were going through this and having made that report, and the person who is committing those abuses against you is still out there and could possibly come back to hurt you some more? How did that make you feel?
Well, like I said, distrust in the system. Even when you file restraining orders, these things don't work. You have to call the police and some lie and say something about there's drugs in the house, there's guns, or there's something for them to come. Even then, they take their sweet time. But I went through always having to look at my back, anxiety, depression, just name it. Knowing that that person is still out there, you cannot sleep. Even though the doors are locked, you're still thinking that they're able to come in. Calling the police won't do anything at that point.
At the time that was happening, did you already have your sons?
Yes, I did. I had 2 of my kids at that time.
So you also had to think about their welfare.
Yes. I had to go back and forth from my mom's to my home, back and forth. Even my mom's place wasn't a conducive place as well, but you had to seek
refuge somewhere.
Yes, going back there by my mom is another turmoil, because growing up, again, safe space, I went through abusive from my mom's uncles, our friends, people she brought home, and I would speak to my teachers, I would speak to the counselors, and not one person came to the house. I went to school.
You spoke to counselors at school, and nobody came back, nobody followed up?
No. I went to school with bruises on my skin, blood on my clothes, and nobody approached my mom. Nobody came home. Nobody did anything.
What kind of system? Now I hear you, Trudy, you chuckled when she said about the false reports that you have to make so that the police can follow up on the restraining order, and then you also commented on they're not being allowed, like that is the counselors not being allowed to follow up or go home. So what is the point?
The point, we have a system that's lack of human resource, and when I say human resource, I mean we don't have sufficient manpower to deal with the situation. So as a youth activist and as a philanthropist, and also a survivor of sexual abuse, you find that I advocate for those things. And when you approach the schools to find out if they need assistance, they gladly tell you yes, they need it. And then they tell you that you have one social worker dealing with the castries and the Dennery Basin. You have one social worker dealing with a wide aspect. So when a counselor gets a report of that nature, they have to go for social services. And you find that since the social worker is so covered in so much, it gets lost. And that's why you find a lot of our children fall through the cracks, and then we say society failed them. But we need to understand that the system is failing them because we're not putting the resources that needs to be there in order to help them. The deep side, because it's a lot of information, but it's actually a very wide topic to discuss.
I sigh because anybody who knows me know that I'm a champion for women who have been abused sexually. And I remember early in my career as a talk show host, I don't believe I was doing what's happening now with Laura then. I think I was doing a stint hosting Newsmaker Live. I think I was still doing Newsmaker Live for that year. And I was talking about sexual abuse and sexual harassment and rape, and I had a caller, and that person is a known operative of the Saint Lucia Labour Party. She knows herself, and those persons who were following me then, they knew who she is. I would not mention her name, I would not say her name, but she called me, and she asked me, I think this was about the 3rd or 4th time I had dealt with that topic, because I felt every time I dealt with the topic, I didn't have enough minutes during the show for people to call and share the experiences, and they were grateful that there was somebody who was opening the lines and creating a platform for them to speak about their experiences. And she asked me, why am I pounding on that topic? Is it that I have been sexually assaulted myself? And the answer was no. But I had family members who had been, and I saw how it destroyed their lives. Now, you, Trudy, you come across as a very strong, resilient young woman. And to look at you, one would never think, hey, here is a survivor of sexual assault. How did you overcome that? And when that happened to you, what was your response? What network did you have around you to help you?
That story of sexual assault has been out there. It didn't happen once, it didn't happen twice. The first instance was as a child at 8. It happened by my godmother's husband at the time. And the individual was and still is a prominent figure of society. And that individual tormented my life until I was the age of 25. And anywhere he met me, he would torment me and tell me, how does it feel to be filthy? How does it feel to be useless?
Also,
and
he made you filthy, and then he's asking you about it.
And then he knew that nothing would have been done because of his stature in society and his father's stature in society. So the network was not really there. I only had my mom, who was a single mother at the time, dealing with it. And you find that I became a little, I would not want to say rebellious, but came to a point where I wanted to see other people hurt just the same way I was hurting. And you found that the standard questions that was still back then when I was growing up is the same questions they ask now when you bring a child that is sexually assaulted. How did you feel? What were you wearing? What was going through your mind? Stop these questions. These questions need to stop. These black and white questions need to stop. Precisely. They make you feel like
you're the fault, you're the reason why it happened.
Every situation is different.
But you're a child.
Yeah, they don't care. They ask you the same question no matter what age you are. And even if you go to the police, the questions and the attitude from the police makes you feel that you shouldn't have come there in the first place. And even
I went to my godmother's house.
They don't care about that. The point of the matter is when you go to the police about sexual assault now, I think back then it was they don't really care. Now it's a point where the police are even frustrated with the amount of rape cases coming to them, that their hands are tied, they don't have the resources. And even when you go to vulnerable persons unit for underage children, they tell you, what do we do now? And it's not a fault on them. Again, we go back to the resources, because they don't know what more to do. You report the person, you go to court, but what happens after that?
But it brings to bear, I mean, it shines the spotlight even further or brighter on this scourge, this what we're facing now with the former commissioner of police and the women. Because how can I service you? You've come here with your daughter, you came with your mother, and right there in the police station, in the police force, there are members in the hierarchy who are committing these very same heinous acts against their subordinates. How are the subordinates supposed to feel? I've always wondered, when you are being tormented by your superiors, when somebody else, a layperson, a civilian, comes and say, I've been raped. But you can't, because it's now, you have PTSD because you're going through the same thing.
Yes, and then you find out, okay, so you go to that one officer, you tell that one officer what happened, then that next officer will call this officer, and then that officer will call this officer, and then you have to continue to replay. And they don't understand that it doesn't matter what form of abuse that you go through, it creates that scar for you, that no matter what amount of counseling that you do, no matter how strong that you are, you have that scar and you deal with it. You either a resilient person or you somebody that is just going to rebel on society.
I term it the RIP effect, the raped in perpetuity effect, because you are raped in perpetuity. You never get over it. every time you have to tell the story, you're getting raped all over again. You come, you make a report, you're raped. That's the second time you're getting raped. They call somebody else, you're being raped again. You go to the hospital for the rape kit, you're raped again. You go to court, you're raped again. And every time the case is adjourned, you get raped again.
Funny thing you mentioned a rape kit. Right now, they are hospital. I don't think our hospitals have rape kits right now. So, because just recently we had a case with a child and they didn't have. So, funny thing that you mentioned it.
This is a good way to segue into healthcare. As a mother, how do you feel when you have a 2-year-old, both of you have 2-year-olds, when that child is ill and you have to take them to the hospital? How does that make you feel, knowing that the deplorable condition of our healthcare system?
You don't answer.
Adding being a mom and being a business owner, a small business owner at that, you don't have the resources or the finances to even have a medical insurance or to put any of those things in place. So you're always afraid that maybe the little you have saved, that's what it has to go to. Sometimes at the time you don't even have anything saved to go to those places and not seek the type of help that you would need, because you would have to pay first before you get the assistance at the hospitals.
And so that even negates going to
Yes.
private health care, because you
Yes.
can't even go to a private doctor because you don't have the resources. And considering how does that make you feel, knowing that the previous prime minister had plans in place for the $75,000 health insurance for every citizen, and we rubbish that for $15,000, or universal health care for octogenarians, 80 plus universal health care?
That's happening where?
For sure. Where? Because I just witnessed the elderly folks being piled up on wheelchairs in a hallway in the hospital. So exactly where is this universal health care happening? That's why I said you don't want my answer, because I just had to deal with the ordeal of our dilapidated health system. It's just ridiculous. It's to a point where you have the machines that's supposed to be giving oxygen either not working, or they have to rotate it and say this patient use it and then try to sanitize it in a way then this patient using it, or a child who's 4 years comes into the emergency room ingesting some substance, and 4 hours later nobody has attended to the child until the parent has to be starting to use obscene language, and then you threaten to put the parent out with security.
But that's an emergency, isn't it?
They don't care about it's an emergency. You're telling me that you're taking blood from a child, you're losing the blood. Our system is ridiculous. You don't have this type of IV to use. You don't have this to do a blood transfusion. You don't have blood.
It's a matter of time before we hear a situation of cross-contamination. Somebody got a fatal illness from...
I'm very sure it has happened. It's just it's not reported, or it's not in the news. I'm very sure it has happened. It's not a short time. I'm very sure it has happened. Given what I have witnessed in just 2 weeks ago, I can say it has happened. Nowhere in this hospital is being sanitized. You find this person gets up, this person sits down, the doctor comes in, you don't even have the sanitization stations working.
They don't have sanitizers.
Well, for this one, I know, because I still sanitize my hands when I get into the hospital. I've stopped and continue to walk with my own and pass the back door, because the sanitization stations never have sanitizers. No soaps in my mom goes to the hospitals on a weekly basis, and she has to walk with her own. And also, I'm told at St. Jude there is a tick infestation. So because we see the animals are yeah. I was just wondering when there is a tick infestation. So you come to convalesce at the hospital, and you're leaving with maybe Lyme's disease or something, because, and we're not doing anything about it. We have yet to fence the hospital.
Do you think that will happen? let's be realistic. Do you really think that will happen? With the current situation in this country, do you really think that will happen? Because when I sat there 2 weeks ago and I witnessed what was going on, I had to ask myself, is this really Saint Lucia? Because I remember growing up, you'd sit down casualty for a couple hours and then people will get up, they'll go home. The nurse will call you and tell you, oh, I'm just calling your number, you're missing, where are you? But now you just seated there, doctors, nurses talking about what they order on Shein, who going where. Like, seriously? Or they shout at you because you're trying to get attention. So here's another scenario. One gentleman sat there waiting for a prescription for 4 hours until he started to get pissed off. And he said, you mean y'all just gonna take 2 minutes and write a prescription for me? I'll report y'all. And then nurse responds to him, even if you report us, nothing will change.
Do you think that is a pushback because the nurses are frustrated?
Yeah, but even if you are frustrated, this person is sick. This person needs the medication. They're explaining to you that the pharmacy is going to close. They need the medication. They need the prescription. You're getting paid to do a job. At the end of the day, yes, you're frustrated with your job, but then you're there to do a job.
Not with the job.
No, but
with the powers that be. Maybe they know there's no medication because we know that.
No, but the person is asking you for the prescription to go to outside. They ask you.
That's another thing, because you've been in hospitalized, and you
Exactly.
still have to get people to get your medication on the outside.
Or they'll tell you no beds, and then a nurse will tell you, what you want me to do, go at my home and take my bed for you?
And the nurses are very prone to that. They'll tell you, I'm not getting paid, or we are understaffed, and they're telling you their problems while even attending to you.
Because
So now the appointment of the new CEO, however they want to give him the title, I now have to ask the question, will these issues be dealt with?
No.
Because I heard that the Minister for Health is doing a good job, and now Damian Greaves is being put there. I now have to, I'm not lashing anybody personally, but I'm asking the question, will these issues be addressed? Because you cannot have labs being taken and then it's missing. You cannot have people sitting there waiting for countless hours, especially with children. You have this businessman who lost his life because he didn't get attention, and he's from Soufrière, newly married. This is the harsh reality that we face. Sometimes even if you have the money, it's not going to save you, because our healthcare system is so far gone. I'm now are we honest with ourselves to say, can it even be rescued at this point?
Nope.
And is that what universal healthcare is?
Even at the health centers where they say it's free.
Lord Koti.
It's free. Free for all. You still have to pay a lot of stuff. I get my birth control at the health centers, and most times there's none. And because that they don't have, now you have to pay for a pregnancy test to tell them that you're not pregnant.
yes, I heard that, and that. Yes, I heard that. Tell us, because you went through that. I heard that, and I could not believe. I told the person who was saying that to me that this is not happening, but you were saying that you went through that. Tell us about it.
Many times.
Explain it to us.
Okay, so you pay.
So you go to the hospital for your monthly birth control.
Yes.
There's none.
There is none. So that the time you're supposed to take it, it's expired. So you have to take it within a set amount of days, 3 days, 4 days, or whatever. So as long as that window has closed, so now you have to take a pregnancy test.
So then,
but you have to pay for that pregnancy test yourself to get it done. So you're paying for the pregnancy test and the birth control.
what?
Yes.
So you had. And you have to do the. You have to do
the test right
at
there, right in front of them. It has to be done in front of them.
So you cannot go to the pharmacy,
Nope.
the private pharmacy, get one of those
They want to
pregnancy
see that
tests
it's
for
done there.
$5.95
No.
and bring the stick.
No, they don't believe you. Even if when you tell them, I'm single, I have nobody, they won't believe you. You have to show
You have
proof.
to do it right there in front of them, which
Or
makes
else
sense.
You have to
which
wait
makes
till your
sense.
cycle comes and actually show them that you're on your cycle. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't that a way degrading?
Of course, it is degrading. How you mean? As if it is, in a way, it is degrading.
Yeah, that's a lot of women.
You should
to go
have
through
what
that.
I need, what you say that I need.
I guess to them, they're thinking that they don't want to be held reliable or
I
responsible.
understand you don't want to be held accountable if something happens, right? I
But the way
understand that.
they're going about it,
But why don't you have it in the first place?
yeah, and you cannot like really go from health center to health center or hospital. You have to wait for all these referrals and all these things, and then sometimes your number is not in. You're supposed to have a system, like a number in the system. Sometimes you go to the next health center and your number is not in the system. You have to go back to your health center because they cannot find you on the system in another place.
Well, it's the same thing with, because it's the same thing with the diabetic. They say you diabetes and hypertension, those non-communicable diseases, you can get your medication and stuff. But if I wanted to get tested with a glucometer at the hospital at St. Jude, I know for St. Jude for sure, I have to pay $30 or $35 to see the doctor, the specialist, and then I have to pay $7 for the test.
Cakey.
Yeah. And we talked about, yeah. So I have to pay $37 for me to get tested to ensure that I don't have diabetes at St. Jude.
The healthcare system is going down the drain by the second.
And we're talking about universal health care.
So then, my next question would be, what is the 2.5% supposed to be doing?
Well, I'm asking you.
No, but I'm confused now. So I'm asking the question, what is it supposed to be doing?
Well, what did they term it as? Is a 2.5 levy for healthcare and
yeah,
security.
But which
we
part?
have the most deplorable healthcare in history.
Yes.
And the
security.
Crime is escalating. So my question to you ladies, what are you going to do about it? We have a segment at the end of the show called the solution segment, and I want you to start thinking about that from now. What are some of the possible solutions that we could have for those situations that we have? Healthcare, rising crime, and how that affects women. And we know that women are the cradle of society,
To me, in the healthcare system, it's like they're, what's the word? Circulating doctors. So you find the same doctor at the health center, the same doctor at his private office, the same doctor at the hospital. So they're stretched thin of their time. So they give bad service.
You say that, right? I hope you know now that the amount of doctors has reduced.
Yeah, so it's making it makes it worse.
Because when I go to my gynae, I go to private doctor. I don't go to the hospitals anymore. And the reason for that is I have white coat syndrome. Every time I get to the hospital, my blood pressure is always elevated. I cannot take it. I cannot sit and wait hours upon hours. So I go to my private care, my private care physician. But as you mentioned, there are less doctors circulating. So what you find is those doctors in private healthcare are now being rotated in the hospitals. So now the same issue that I have when I go to the hospital, I have it in the private health care. And there's a running joke about being a patient, right? They say that the reason why it's called a patient, you call a patient because you're not supposed to have patience. And then they say that the reason why it's called a practice is because the doctors have to practice on the patients. So here I am, getting ready to go to my gynae, and I get a call. Just as I'm leaving the house, I get a call. Mrs. Noel, I'm just calling to inform you that your appointment has been cancelled. We will be giving you a call to let you know when we can reschedule you. Why is my appointment cancelled at this last minute? Well, the doctor has been called to the hospital because of an emergency and cannot make her afternoon appointments. So I'm left behind, and I want to be mad, but I can't, because I understand that the hospitals don't necessarily have the personnel, to take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And if you have somebody in surgery, you can't say, "Oh, guess what? I didn't oversee that there's going to be this number of complications. I gotta go to my private practice, But we're due for a break. When we come back, more on healthcare. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hard-hitting, punchy, straight to the point, like it is. Starting on Monday, September 23rd, 2024. And every Monday from 8 p.m. Join in our simulcast on Hot 7 TV, Cable 117, Plug and Play, Channel 7, and Kiss FM 105.5 and 105.9, where we discuss politics and current affairs, the issues that matter and concern you, with your host, Spider Montu. See you every Monday from 8 p.m. when we tell it like it is.
Madam President, I think it's important to make the point that today we're borrowing $152 million. And year to date in this financial year, when we look at the various order papers that we have analyzed in the House, and my colleague did a very fantastic job in doing that. She did so for the calendar year. We see that year to date, it's over $400 million that this administration would have borrowed, coming here on separate occasions to borrow money.
If you're going to grow your country, you have to grow the capacity. You have to make sure they're healthy. You also have to make sure they're well educated. But that takes a plan. It takes a commitment. And it's not about just words. It has to be much more significant. And I have not heard anything here today, Mr. Speaker, that would give me any comfort, nor should it give any other St. Lucian comfort, that they're going to use this opportunity they found on their lap appropriately, and to make sure that the young people of this country and the workforce of this country are going to get jobs that they can make careers of, jobs they can raise their families on, jobs in which, yes, they can become international and raise their own standard of living. That should be the aspiration. And I did not hear any of that today, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Welcome back. This is our final segment of tonight's roundtable, and we're going to be dealing with solutions. This policy of universal health care for individuals aged 80 and above, limited to health centers and polyclinics, raises important questions. While it may sound like progress, it's essentially a rebranding of what has always existed: free healthcare services at these facilities. The real issue lies in the exclusion of St. Jude and OKEU hospitals, where specialized care is often needed for the elderly. Now, some of you might be wondering, where is that coming from? Because the ads that have been going out never excluded St. Jude or OKEU. I would suggest that you call Riani Isidore and ask him whether he is aware of what he was saying when he called Timothy Poleo's show News Spin yesterday. Okay? Because this is what he said. He said that people are confusing it, and that the universal health care for 80 plus is excluding St. Jude, and it's only inclusive of the health centers and the polyclinic. Now, many seniors require diagnostic tests, surgeries, and treatments that cannot be provided at primary care facilities. How many of you have been to the health center and asked for a Doppler or, one of those? The tests even begin to flip my mind, because I'm still so flabbergasted at the pronouncements of Riani Isidore. So they need the diagnostic tests. They need surgeries. How many of us have ever had surgery done at the health center? And treatments that cannot be provided at primary care facilities. Without access to these hospitals, the promise of universal health care becomes hollow for those who need it the most. So, we talked a lot about the problems. Let us deal with some of the solutions. What are some of the solutions that you can find, or you can think of, for healthcare? Let's start with healthcare. Start with you, Trudy.
Solutions for healthcare. Like I asked the question earlier, can our healthcare system even be saved at this point? Because it's at such a dire stage. But I think that the minister needs to to sit down, go back to the drawing boards, take all of the issues that we currently face and see what policies can be put in place. They may have to remove this universal health care. We're not ready to implement it, and see what best fits and how they can actually save the healthcare system as it is.
Because what Rihanna is in effect saying is an overburdening of the health centers. How will,
but the health centers are partially not functioning. Some of them are part-time. Some of them, even if they open, they don't have the resources, both human and the medical resources, in order to assist the persons who are flooding the health centers.
So what exactly?
Yeah. So what
there's
exactly?
Additional pressure on the ones that are open, like Leclerc, for instance, which has to bear the burden of Castro Central Health Center being closed. And now you're saying, oh, you should go. Don't go to the hospital. Don't go to OKEU. If you're 80 and over, go to the health center and under-resourced.
How many 80 plus people even leave their house to go to health centers?
Exactly.
Are they even open at the appropriate time when they actually need the service?
So the question now becomes, has the time come for us to look at mobile health centers? Yes. Because some of us live in areas, like for instance, if I'm living in Majomel, in Labrie, I don't have access to the health center because the health center is in Labrie Village, but Majomel is, I have to take maybe 2-3 buses to get down to Labrie to get the bus. I have to walk, I have to get a ride or something to get down to, or hire a bus or van to take me to Labrie. So maybe the time has come for mobile health centers?
Yes, they have some nurses that are actually going around to different homes for the elderly as well, but that's the same nurses that are needed at the health centers. So it's still the same thing. So that's a good idea to have.
So that's what I'm saying, that they need to go back to the drawing board and see what policies that they need to implement. Because then you have certain projects that are ongoing, certain appointments that have been made that could have been shelved, and actually pump those monies into the human resources that we need in the various agencies, social services, nurses, doctors, etc., in order for us to facilitate and actually develop the country and move forward.
Speaking of the human resource, I think that they should probably invest in education more. If it make it, again, not free or partially free for people or students who really want to go into that area, that field of their career, to be nurse, because it's expensive to go down that road. So to have people trained in that area and for free.
So make it a priority area.
Yes.
You see, and then it's funny thing that you mentioned that, because if we go back into the previous administration and we look at what St. Jude's, the new structure of St. Jude's, and we look at the old structure of St. Jude's, the old structure of St. Jude was supposed to have been turned into a training and research facility that would have facilitated the entire Caribbean, but also facilitate Saint Lucia. So now we have to ask the question, did persons really listen when the previous administration was presenting in terms of healthcare, or were they just distracted by all the fanfare and the color and the jumbo and everything that was going on? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, we can all sit down and say, oh, I'm Poto Flabo and I'm Poto Leba, but we need to actually look at what's going to impact and what's going to develop our country.
We need to be more patriotic.
Exactly. We need to focus on country first.
When I was coming up this evening, we were listening to a gospel song, and it was saying, may his favor shine upon you and your family and your children and your children's children. And I think this is what the time has come when we have to look at this. We have to look at, are the policies that are being thrust in our faces, do they accommodate or make accommodations for not just ourselves, but our family and our children and their children and their children? You know, we have to start looking at those measures, whether we are only concerned about ourselves, the immediate short term, or are we in it for the long haul? So we need to increase our access to rural clinics with mobile health centers. And we do know that there is a field hospital that is not being used. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah.
And now the question, it begs to ask the question, is the present administration, do they care about the health aspect of Saint Lucia? Do they care? How many sectors do we ask them, do they care about?
But also,
because it's supposed to be opened every 6 months, and that has been there for how many years now? It has never been opened.
3 years. Now, something that Mel mentioned earlier, we keep recycling the same personnel, and you said it too. We have a nutrition problem where we're losing medical professionals, and the ones that are there, we're recycling them, we're moving them around. So we have a finite amount of sand, and we've just expanded, or we want to expand the sandbox, but we're not increasing the amount of sand in the sandbox.
You're mentioning that, and funny thing is the Prime Minister said this is nothing new. Healthcare officials have always been resigning and going to greener pastures. He said it's nothing.
So why can't the greener pastures be on our shores?
That's the same.
For them to stay. There's nothing here for them to stay.
Wow. This is not looking very good for you, Mr. Prime Minister.
The doctors here themselves go seek medical attention someplace else. They don't even have faith in their own system.
What about wellness programs? I mean, the best healthcare is no healthcare. I mean, and listen, mind you, I don't have a need to go to the hospital because I am healthy. What about developing wellness programs and lifestyle coaching initiatives?
That's a good one.
And funny thing that you mentioned that, because we tend to, as much as we're talking about healthcare, mental illness falls under healthcare.
Absolutely.
And it's a taboo subject in St. Lucia. For some reason it's taboo, that people feel that, okay, because you're depressed, that you're supposed to show certain signs to say that you're depressed. That right. And then you find that you have what we call the wellness center, which is more like a torture center.
Explain.
That one of the doctors at that facility, when I spoke to her, I asked the question, because I had more than one person that I was advocating for at that facility, and I asked her the question, would you put your child at this facility if they were dealing with sexual abuse and they were dealing with the ramifications and the breakdowns? She said no. So if you, the physician at that facility, will not put your child there, why should I advocate and push somebody there?
In Saint Lucia, the healthcare system deals with depression with appeal.
Yeah.
So everything in Saint Lucia is a tablet or medication. That's the only way they deal with it.
Because you see these guys come back and they're dazed. They're dazed.
Let me give you an example. Me going through my whole face. I don't think people in Saint Lucia even realize that there's depression. They don't think depression is a real thing for black people. They don't think that, you have problems, whatever, you're making excuses or you're putting up a word to you having problems. And in my years of all my stress and problems, I've probably tried committing suicide a couple of times, and nobody followed up. They tried sending me there with appeal or trying to give me medication. How is medication supposed to erase all what I've been through? Then I'm sedated, then I cannot work, then more problems, and
so what I hate
it's a domino effect.
Sometimes you need the personal effect. You need excuse me. You need human interaction.
Yeah, so let me give you an example. Funny thing, you mentioned suicide. So you have a suicide hotline. So you're telling me that I'm at the verge of committing suicide. I will call somebody to ask me what do I have in my hand to harm myself? Oh, so do make sure you don't harm yourself. Make sure you don't harm yourself. I will call you back tomorrow morning around 8 o'clock and make sure you don't harm yourself, to make sure you, like, seriously?
So somebody calls you and says that?
If you call the suicide hotline, that's what they tell you.
That's not true.
Yes.
That is not true. Don't say things that are not true. This program is about shedding light.
I am telling you, okay, so like I said earlier, I am a survivor of sexual abuse. And I'm telling you that as a survivor of someone who attempted suicide. Okay? And I'm telling you that as an advocate for persons who I basically push to call the suicide hotline. And they basically tell you they don't want to call. Because the people there are nonchalant. They tell you, oh, okay, make sure you stay away from the knives, don't drink any substance. Come on. If I want to kill myself, that's what you're going to tell me?
Because you do know, I say this, and I know you do know, that when somebody says, I'm thinking of killing myself, it's a cry for help. They're not yet there. And this is the point where you have to intervene to ensure that they don't complete. They need to send somebody out there. They need to ensure that you are like you said, in a safe space.
But you know it's a criminal offense in Saint Lucia, right?
Can you believe it?
So you're telling me, and that's when I touched on mental illness. So you're telling me that I'm thinking of committing suicide and you're going to put me in prison for 5 years. How have you dealt with the situation? It's the same way, like, okay, so for example,
our laws are archaic and need revamping, so this is one of the solutions.
For example, somebody who has raped an individual, you're sending that person bodily, right? You're saying that person has raped, you're sending the person bodily. How have you dealt with that situation? Because that person still has to go back in society. So you have only now put the person to sit at bodily and think of how they're going to be more strategic to not to get caught.
How the crime starts.
Mental illness has various stages.
Is that there's not much rehabilitation going on.
Precisely.
And we need more of that. So that's one of the solutions.
We need to find out why certain things are happening and to deal with it. It's the same way with crime. When you stifle those guys in the ghetto and you try to say you shun them because they're from the ghetto, and so for example, the prime minister goes around, he goes to the ghetto and he has 6-7 bodyguards. I'm in the ghetto, I'm raised in the ghetto, and I see you do that. One time, either I rage against you or I start to tell you certain things, because what does that say? Like, you're so afraid of me? We need to look at how we deal with persons. It's the same way that they pass the crime bill.
This is important.
They cross or if you found a gun, then you have certain amount of time in prison. Do you really think that somebody who has been sexually abused, or somebody who has witnessed abuse, or somebody who has been impacted by violence, and they want to let their voices be heard and they get that gun to inflict pain onto that person, do you really think that them thinking, oh, if the police get me for gun and I will spend that amount of time in prison, do you really think that is going to scare them? No, it's not.
But I think most of the time people are prepared for that. They've said to themselves, I am prepared to go to jail to save my life.
But that's what I'm saying.
So what I'm saying is not a deterrent.
Exactly. So we've not dealt with the issue. Basically, you, like the old people would say, you have a bobo and you try and put plaster on it. But then while the plaster is on it, the bobo is getting wider.
We haven't changed the times yet, because before all this abuse and all these things, it used to just be swept under the table, or wajima, or yes. Parents didn't care, or, because the person is in high status, you don't want to deal with that, so you rather just tell your daughter or your son to shut up or take it, or you travel to get out of the situation. That's the only thing we could do, like leave Saint Lucia. Why do we have to leave our spaces?
Absolutely. Because I when I was doing that segment, that series on what's happening now with Laura, I had a lot of people tell me that they left either under their own steam, or they were sent away, and they were never dealt with. They never dealt with the issue. And I remember there was this woman who was telling me, she was in the 60s, 70s at the time, and she was saying to me, she is so grateful because she's about 70. This happened to her when she was about 30, and she had never said to anybody that this is, like, they sent her away, and she had never said to anybody. She lived in England. She had never said to anybody, not her husband, not her children, that this has happened to her. And she started acting out. Why? Because she came down to Saint Lucia on a vacation, and that same person who had done that to her had done it to a little child, 5 years old. And she got triggered. When she went back to England, she could not deal. She couldn't cope. She became a different person, and her husband could not understand. She almost got divorced at that big age. And he said to her, something happened when you went to Saint Lucia. You need to tell me. And she broke down and she told him. And he said to her, you need to tell our sons. They had 2 sons together. You need to tell our sons. And she said, no, she's so ashamed. He said, there's nothing to be ashamed of. And on top of that, I want you to tell our sons. And when that case is called, I want us to go down to Saint Lucia and to offer support to that young child's family, because you are a living testament to what happened and what could happen. It was the most difficult thing, she said, to sit with her sons and to tell her sons that this had happened to her. And they cried. One even went so far as to switching his major, and he started studying law and to help women and girls who are battling that. And she went to Saint Lucia. Every time the case was called, she went to Saint Lucia. And the day that the case was called, the man died. So she never got closure, and the child never got closure. But the good thing about it is the child was only 5 years old. So that child still has the ability, the capacity to overcome. But she didn't. No.
The child will not. The child will still be scarred.
The child will still be scarred. But the child did not live 70 years knowing that that person is out there and could still do it to somebody else. So from that perspective, she said that child was saved because she had to deal with it every year. She never said to anybody that this had happened to her. She suffered and a piece of her died. And she regretted not having spoken to anybody about it because it happened to that child and other children before that child. That child just happened to have a mother who cared and brought it out. But what about the other children who didn't have that background, that support? So that child never has to deal with what she dealt with. But of course, like I said, RIP, you always have to deal with that. Let's talk a little bit about, because I'm getting triggered. I'm getting triggered, and we could end the show on this note. But let's talk a little bit about cost of living solutions. What are some of the solutions? Because all of this we've talked about,
it impacts. It's all connected.
Exactly. It all comes down to, do I have the income, disposable or otherwise, to take care of all of those things?
Let's look at statistics. Statistics shows that a single person, not a parent, a single person needs $1,500 for basic living, not including rent. Basic living in Saint Lucia. And what is the minimum wage?
It's a little over $1,200, I think.
Okay. So what does that tell you?
So we don't have a living wage.
No.
We have a minimum wage, but we don't have a living wage. So what can we do? Because I'll tell you something. As a business owner, we all here are business owners. We know that we cannot afford the minimum wage. Nope. We cannot afford it. Sometimes we cannot afford it for ourselves, to pay ourselves a minimum wage. Nope. And we cannot afford to pay somebody to help us in the business at the minimum wage. And we do know that there are a number of small businesses that have shut down or have shrunk the size of their business because they can't afford the minimum wage. What are some of the things that the measures that we can put in place to ensure that we have a minimum wage that is also a livable wage, but that can be afforded by the businesses? Because not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur.
That would be interesting, but it goes back to saying the policymakers need to put policies in place.
Well, it all goes back to the cost of living. That's it.
That seems like
it all goes back to the cost of living. It all goes back to us talking about inflation. It all goes back to what we talked about at the top of the show. We go in to the supermarket today, we buy a can of tuna fish for $5. You know, at my store, at my parents' store, we don't sell small tuna fish anymore. No, we don't. Because now some people will think, oh, you're not for the mile away. Hello. Have you looked at the price of a small can of tuna fish? 4 something. And the price of a big can of tuna fish? 5 something. So what's the point?
Exactly.
You understand? So what we have to do is all of that CIP money that we have floating around, we have waiting in the caboose for when election is being called, for us to just smear that money all over the place. When we look at the cost of gas that is artificially high, the monies that we are collecting from that, can we not put measures in place where we get tax breaks, where we can get expand government programs? Can we not have a government pantry where certain persons can go in and get.
No, as entrepreneurs, you're talking
Now you're being
you're opening worms.
you're being a little overzealous. You're being ambitious. There, you.
But isn't that what we're supposed to?
You
They have
way
programs
above.
in place. Like it's just a facade.
Okay,
It's
so
just a
let
name.
me tell you why I tell you you've been overzealous. We have currently equity. Equity says that their list is too long. That's why they depend on NGOs to assist, right? And then the mentality there is, if I help you this week, your financial situation changes by next week.
I'll get the help again.
Because poverty is a mindset. So, to explain.
To be on the poverty list, you cannot have a washing machine or a phone or a laptop or any kind of device at your home.
Oh, we have to be the poor of the poor, like
Yes.
what
Yes.
they made arrangements for the
you cannot
people in
be
Dennery.
needy if your
Yes.
phone is touch screen. You cannot be needy if you have proper electricity things at your home.
But you're right, because I remember a few months ago, we were in my community doing what we call the welfare checks. We were going to persons who are normally out in society and they're sick and shut in, they're homebound and they can't. And we went to this particular home and we were talking to this woman and she started crying. She said, "Oh, thank you for coming to visit," and da da da. And she started crying. She says, "Look at what it was raining." She said, "Look at where the water is coming in." And we said, "Oh, but have you visited the rep?" And she said, "They came to visit." And they said to her, they asked her how many children she had. She answered. They asked if all of them are living with her. She said, "No, none of them are living with her." Said, "How many are living abroad?" She answered. And they said, "You're not poor." In other words, her children.
You're supposed to take care of her.
Right. Now, imagine you have 9 children, but all of them are maybe hovering along the poverty line, or they themselves
their own problems, they have their own family,
9
their
children
own
of their
issues,
own,
yes.
and and then she said, when she mentioned that to them, they said, "Well, the ones overseas will have to take over." Like as if when you're overseas, you have no problems. You have a money tree in the backyard.
See, people only see you a business person. They don't thinking about the nitty gritties. I have a small restaurant, but it's called commercial. So now you're paying exorbitant prices. Like you have one fry, and you'll be paying like $300-$400 a month just with one little fry or one little fridge.
Right. Because
Then you
your
have your
electricity
home.
is not,
I have to still pay rent for my house. I still have to pay rent for the business. I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 kids, grown kids, baby kids. We have no privacy. But people don't have to know our business.
Right.
Because they see you have a business, so they think, okay, she has money, she needs no help. But the business is basically just regenerating. You make that money today, you spend it back
Right,
the same.
so
You don't even have time to go to the
hand to
bank
mouth.
to say, hey, I'm saving.
I'm depositing.
Because
Which is what you're supposed to be doing as a small business. Your money's supposed to filter through the bank so that you can have a record.
So now the bank's not going to give you a loan or not going to give you a grant because, hey, your money's not coming through the bank, but I don't even have time to put it there. My kid needs a shoe, or my kid needs something, I have to pay the rent. I don't have time to go to the bank to even do that. So then you're not poor because you have that coming in. So
Yep, that's a harsh reality in Saint Lucia.
yeah, because you making sure your kid go to school with a pencil, you're making sure your kid have an exercise book. You're not poor because you could afford to give your kids what they need. But then you're sacrificing other things to get that done.
We're running out of time. Final comments.
I don't even know how to comment here right now. All I can say is stay safe, Saint Lucia. Try to avoid the hospitals. Try not to get sick. And let's all look at crime holistically and see how we can curb on the current numbers.
Short and sweet. Prioritize self-care. Love yourself first to be able to put love out there. Help wherever you can. Join a community, join a network. No, let's all put our heads together to see what we can do to help Saint Lucia.
I like that what you said, because you cannot pour out of an empty cup, right? Check on your neighbors, absolutely, because when you think that you were the one going through the most, there's somebody else going through. Saint Lucia, this is all the time that we have. But as we continue to celebrate and observe the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, let tonight's discussion serve as a reminder we cannot remain silent. From holding leaders accountable to demanding respect for women's voices. This is a fight for dignity and equity. The change starts now, and it starts with us. Together, let us build a society where women are safe, valued, and empowered. Thank you for joining us this evening. Let this be the beginning of action, and let us begin to right the wrong.